Greetings, the Hijabi Gamer here, and just a warning, this video is going to get very, very rambly, because it's me going into random geeky stuff that I wish I knew more people around me who are interested in it. However, I do have a YouTube channel, and people who comment, and I love the comments. I sometimes miss them, sometimes I don't get alerts. Oddly, I don't get alerts for all the comments, but I try to keep up with them because I really like reading what people say. I may not even respond, but I like what people are saying, so why not? Anyway, Star Trek. Let me start with Star Trek. So, I just posted a picture of the Romulan warbird, the Pterodactyl class warbird, because in Star Trek, I have always liked the Romulans, even more than the Federation. If you were to ask me, Kat, who are your favorite characters in, say, Star Trek The Next Generation, I would tell you Commander Tomalak, Commander Tavok, Centurion Bakra, that's the Romulan who got stranded with Geordi LaForge, and Aladar Jarok. You know, from Deep Space Nine, Senator Renak, Sub-Commander Tarul, Voyager, Telek Ramor. Every time, I love Romulans. What's interesting is Kai, my Corpus character, is apparently a Romulan name. Every time I was thinking about Kai, I kept getting flashes to Romulan, and I'm like, why? This name I randomly came up with. Apparently, no, I was remembering it. Kai is a Romulan name. It's from the Diane Dwan novels about the Romulans. I'm going to keep it, but that kind of gives you an idea. It's kind of disappointing that Corpus names and Romulan names are just interchangeable. It would have been more interesting if they had stuck to the formula of the Corpus language. You would have had more culturally appropriate and unique names. Now you have names that basically you could switch. If you were to go up to a Star Trek fan who doesn't know Warframe and were to say something like, this is Commander Alid, they would believe you that it was a Romulan name. Sub-Commander Viso would work for Romulan. On the other hand, Tabak, Kai, would fit for the Corpus. It really would have been so much more interesting if they had stuck to the Corpus language when it came to the names. Because then, again, they would be unique. And they would fit. I mean, the Corpus language is very unique. I think, what was it? Je te tape is grenade. They have a very odd letter combination because of the lack of consonants. But that aside, I was like, okay, so if you were to face the Romulans versus the Corpus, I put a poll. I was like, who would you think would win? Now, I can't vote in my polls, but sometimes I will comment on what I would have voted on if I could. And in this case, I believed it would be the Romulan Star Empire. And I started writing out why I thought the Romulans would easily beat the Corpus. I mean, the cloaking technology, just the fact that the Romulans have twice the strength at least of a Corpus, because the Corpus are still human, whereas the Romulans are not. And like the Vulcans, I mean, think of that fight between Kirk and Spock in, I think it's the Paradise Syndrome. And Spock is half Vulcan. So can you imagine a full Vulcan or a Romulan against the Corpus? Don't get me wrong, the Corpus aren't weaklings. I've joked that they could probably out-bench press most modern day humans running around in those spacesuits. They're very light on their feet, but against a Romulan, then add the cloaking technology and the simple fact that it's the Romulan Star Empire versus a bunch of planets. But then it occurred to me just how bad Corpus technology is. I mean, they're supposedly millennia in the future. And I was thinking about the Romulans and then the Federation, and I'm like, their technology is better. Add the fact that if you were to look at our own technology and projected technological advances we would have, we would probably outpace the Corpus, at least in a lot of things, within the next century. The Corpus technology sucks. Now I thought, well, first off, let me go with Destiny. You know what? Like I said, this is going to be a little rambly, but Destiny, right? Let's look at the Vanguard and the, Earth. Destiny takes place 700 years in the future. However, the technology, when you look at it, while their technology is definitely more advanced than ours, it's not what you would project our technology to be in 700 years. We don't know what their medical technology is like. because, well, guardians don't need medical technology. Their ghosts just heal them. But we can assume it is definitely more advanced than ours. However, not by much. You would expect it to have been far more advanced for 700 years. However, Destiny has a very good reason why technology isn't as advanced as it should be. The collapse and the age of, after the collapse, humanity basically collapsed. Humanity was on the verge of extinction. They had the Dark Age. They had to claw themselves out of the Dark Age and are still trying to recover a lot of the technology they lost during the Golden Age. So they have a very good reason why their technology isn't as advanced as you would expect, because basically they were living in a Dark Age for a long time. So it makes sense. On the other hand, if you were to tell me, the Corpus versus the Guardians, the Vanguard and the Guardians, I would put my money on the Guardians simply because they're immortal and they've got powers. And I mean, come on, if a single Tenno can go through a Corpus ship and wipe everyone out, yeah, a single Guardian can easily do that too. So, on the other hand, I don't see the Vanguard being like, we're going to wipe them out, especially since, again, the Corpus are human. I see them working things out, especially since, again, the Corpus are human. It's not like the Cabal or the Hive or the Fallen. They're still human. But that's why Destiny isn't as technologically advanced as you would expect. On the other hand, the Corpus, I mean, we were discussing it during my live stream, either it was the week before or last week, and this whole idea of organ transplants. And honestly, I think that's just an empty threat. Even when Unico's like, there's a market for limbs. You gotta be kidding me. No. I mean, we right now should be able to regrow limbs and organs within a century. And I'm not even being generous when I say that. It's probably going to be less than a century. So, there's no way. It is so inefficient and not profitable to go with organ transplants and selling limbs. They definitely would have the technology to regrow limbs efficiently and quickly. Now, people have said, oh, well, the colonies. No. At the end of the day, they're trying to make a profit and a market. And this is like, there was a scene in Star Trek, the original series, The City on the Edge of Forever, when McCoy is going on about stitches and, sutures and being horrified. The idea of organ transplants would, if you were to get a Corpus medic, they'd be like, that is disgusting. Why would somebody do something so inefficient and stupid? Organ transplants aren't as simple as people might think. Even if they have a means of bypassing the problem with, placing somebody else, a foreign object in another person's body and the immune system response, it's just so inefficient and it makes absolutely no sense. I think that Unico may genuinely believe it, but I highly doubt it. I think with the Solaris, they use limbs and organ removal to frighten them. But do I think there's a market for it? Absolutely not. I am pretty sure that they probably have an injection that they could just give you and you will regrow an organ quick. Without a problem, regrow limbs. I mean, on top of that, it is inefficient for them to go around removing lungs. Because first of all, there are very few organs that you can remove and still survive. You can remove one of your lungs, one of your kidneys, a part of your liver. But do you really want your Corpus tech running around with one lung? Especially when your goal is profit. You want your people to be no, it doesn't make sense. And I've been thinking about Corpus mechanical technology in particular because, it's interesting. Ironically, Kai doesn't get injured very often. But in the last couple, I've had him injured twice. Keep in mind, it's a century apart. But at one point, a comment, Shadow of Hawk asked, he'd like to know what would happen to Kai to make him not joke around or comment on fake fathers. And so I'm like, well, I wanted to point out just how advanced Corpus medical technology has to be. So Tico asks him, how many vertebrae did that Moa crush? It's like, because to emphasize the point that they could probably, heal a damaged spine easily. And the fact that he's on his feet recovering from a damaged spine. it's perfectly feasible given the level of they have to have advanced their medical technology. The robotics also. I mean, we're developing that stuff right now. We will have the level of Corpus robotics within the next century. I mean, maybe we wouldn't build something as big as the Jackal, but we wouldn't need it. But do I really? I mean, we may not have the exact same robotics, but the level of robotics that they have, I absolutely see us developing that kind of technology within the next century. And you're telling me that the Corpus is thousands of years in the future? The only thing that has advanced is space travel and transference. So it's like, wait a minute, millennia. Now, one of the interesting things that suddenly occurred to me while making these videos and just thinking about it is the idea of the robotics. The thing they have over the Federation, the thing that gives them an advantage, are their robotics. Which is interesting. Why didn't the Federation... I understand the Federation is against genetic engineering. The Corpus are not. The Corpus have eugenics programs. They have no problem with that. The Federation is against genetic engineering. But, correct me if I'm wrong, the Federation doesn't have any rules against robotics. And the only robotics they seem to be focused on are androids like Data. But you don't need sentient or semi-sentient robotics. You can have really dumb robots that are still of an intelligence enough to be able to fight in battle. I mean, the Federation... I mean, I get it. The Federation isn't primarily combat focused. On the other hand, during the Dominion War, do I think if they really needed to, the Starfleet would be able to create robotics equal or even more advanced than the Corpus? Absolutely. It's just interesting that they never did. The Romulans don't have any robotics, combat robotics, as far as we know. So it's like, wait a minute. What drove the Corpus to do that? But the Federation, the Romulans, I mean, I can understand the Klingons not having robotics because they, glory and honor in battle. But the Romulans, the Federation, especially the Federation, you'd think they want to minimize their own casualties. So I think it's an issue of manpower. There are a lot more humans in the Federation and a lot more alien species united in the Federation than in the Corpus. The Corpus, we discussed it and we're trying to figure out what kind of manpower they have. We know the Corpus definitely recruits, and I think they see a value in recruits. I would put it as at least a quarter of the Corpus are recruits. There is a value to the recruits. These are people who, are coming from the outside. And they want to be a part, they choose to join the Corpus. But I think when it comes down to it, is an issue of manpower. The Grenadier can create whole, legions of troops by just popping them out of, their test tubes. The tube men basically come out fully grown. Whereas the Corpus have parents and kids. And while I'm pretty sure the Corpus encourages their techs to have kids, which is why I gave Tico 6 and Kai 4, and I've joked that Viso probably has kids somewhere out there because he's old enough to have a bunch of kids. And he probably gets a bonus for every kid he has. They probably do still have an issue of manpower. I mean, at least that's what drove them to have robotics. It's interesting to think what drove the Corpus to focus on robotics, whereas the Federation did not. Still, I feel like the Corpus technology isn't nearly as advanced as you would expect for people who've existed for millennia. Now, I was trying to come up with excuses why. Like in Destiny, you have the collapse in the Dark Age. What about the Corpus? Now, originally, I was thinking, okay, you know what? Maybe it's because the Corpus came into being after the collapse of the Orchid. That's not so. The Corpus existed during the age of the Orchid. They didn't like them. The Orchid didn't like the Corpus, but they were there. And the collapse of the Orchid was thousands of years ago. So even if Corpus society was to completely have collapsed with the Orchid, which it probably did not. But even if it did, they have Orchid technology. They have millennia. It's not like Guardians and Destiny who don't have how long since it's been since the collapse. It's not nearly as long as it's been since the Orchid collapsed with the Corpus. You would expect the Corpus to be far more technologically advanced. I mean, they don't even have light speed travel. But okay, fine. That, technically, going at the speed of light is impossible. There are ways to work around it. But okay, fine. Maybe the Corpus just did see a need to leave the solar system. But, I mean, and the whole idea that they are driven by profit would push for more innovation. It's interesting when you think about it. The Federation advanced themselves because they want to advance themselves, because, the desire to advance humanity. There's no profit in it. It's just the drive to improve ourselves. That's less believable than the Corpus drive for profit and improving their technology based on that. So you would think if they have existed for millennia, they would have definitely advanced their technology far more, especially since the Corpus are intelligent. They deal with eugenics programs. They push for intelligence. The Corpus are very smart. I place the Corpus as superior intellectually than the Cabal, which is somewhat Shadowhawk pointed out. It's like we said that the Corpus could beat the Cabal, but it would be very close. It would be very difficult. The Cabal are definitely not as technologically advanced as the Corpus. They have the bigger size. Their ships are big. Their tanks are big. But are they more technologically advanced than the Corpus? I would go with no. I mean, they also have the advantage of size in, combat. A Cabal is the size of 5 Corpus combined. Again, the Corpus aren't weaklings, but you put a single Corpus against a single Cabal and, yeah. You put a handful of Corpus against a single Cabal, and again, it's going to be, send a couple Moa out there. But, for the Corpus to beat the Cabal, they would have to, first of all, unite as a single front. People assume that the Corpus is a single front, but they are not. They are a bunch of factions united, under a single language and, trade agreements. But they have had skirmishes between each other. However, we do know that they can put that aside to fight as one. I mean, they did it against the Sentients. And I suspect, now, given the state of the game after the New War, things have gone back, but I suspect that the Corpus have become a more united front after the New War. Given the number of losses they have suffered, dealing with the fact that there's still Corpus who are veiled, the fact that just the time when, they didn't have contact with the Board of Directors, I could see that this would unite the Corpus even more. So I could see them becoming a united front after the New War. So it would depend on, first of all, them uniting against the Cabal, which they definitely can do. They're very intelligent. They're more intelligent than the Cabal. They would have to use their technology very smart. They would have to innovate very fast. And it would be a very close fight because the Cabal have conquered a lot. So if they came up against the Corpus, it would be a really, really rough fight, and they could potentially lose. They would really have to innovate, use their technology to hack into the Cabal technology, because the Cabal technology isn't stupid either. They have a whole Cabal battle network. It's, they have advanced technology too. So the Corpus would have to be able to take advantage of that. And they would have to be very innovative. And they would have to think outside the Corpus box. And approach things, outside of the dorm, which is one of the reasons why I think they do value recruits, because they pride themselves on their Corpus efficiency. But that's one of the things that I have Kai constantly pointing out to Tika when they're trying to take advantage of, the veiled Corpus. It's like, we're still fighting against the Corpus, and it's still Corpus efficiency. So I have a whole mission where it's like, okay, according to Corpus procedure, when you set this evacuate order, they have to leave evacuate within a certain time period. They have to evacuate at a certain point. They're very, they pride themselves on their robotic efficiency, but at the same time, that makes them very predictable. So they need to be, I think, recruits are great because they're not. It's like when you bring someone from the outside in who notices things that you didn't notice because you're used to seeing it on a daily basis, but the newcomers, so that's why I think there is a value. I mean, the thing to keep in mind is the Corpus has existed for millennia. So they're not stupid. They're very smart. And they've had to adapt. But at the same time, I don't know. That's one of the things that it's hard to believe this has been going on for millennia. There's stagnation, and then there's just stagnation. I guess taking into account the fact that they live much longer lives. The Romulans, on average, are 2 centuries. Whereas the Corpus, maybe you fall into when you live for centuries, which that whole thing about their aging has me totally Darvo is over 100 years old, and supposedly he is considered an adolescent. That would mean what? I don't think they wait for 100 years before they put you to work. I would be surprised if they start trading at 20 and are out on ships at 50. And I was thinking, trying to think about Tico and Kai and when they met for the first time and how, because it's about 40, 50 years between them. Technically, it's probably closer. It's over 50 because Kai lied about his age. All recruits lie about their age. But so he's about 10. But it's like I was thinking Tico was annoyed to find out that they had dropped the minimum age for ship service from 75 to 50. And he's like, these are only kids. But I figure maybe they have the younger ones on land assignments, less dangerous assignments until they're older. But it's still, you're telling me that their childhood is 100 years? I don't see them living for 100 years without working. Especially given how profit-driven they are. So I figure Kai starts on a ship at 50. And, Tico's he's in his 90s and he's still considered young. But, I don't know. It's just maybe the fact that they do live for so long means it ends up in this kind of stagnation where it's you get into the cycle. But at the same time, again, you have this board of directors who are competing with each other and trying to advance. On the other hand, they're all monopolies where each one of them has a field of their own which they are advanced in. I don't know. It just, again, the whole idea of the Federation being all about advancing humanity for the sake of humanity, whereas the Corpus are like, all right, whoever has a better idea, let's make some money now. Especially with the board and the higher ups. Like I said, the lower downs is different. They're fighting for, they're working towards their boss's profit, for the fortune of Aledvi. I'm just, the idea that they have existed like this for millennia. I guess the age thing is a factor. Humans, even in the age of Star Trek, live a century and a half, whereas for a Corpus, being a century is considered young. I've joked about trying to figure out the ages simply because, if the Corpus lived for centuries, I put Tico at around 300, Kai at around 260, 270, Viso it is 250. But that might be a factor in why stagnated they are, because their lifespans are so long that, they just fall into a rut. I don't know. At the same time that they have that decades of experience. So it's just, I feel like their technology really isn't where it should be. Again, even looking at the projection of our old technology and what we're working on today with robotics, our robotics will surpass the Corpus Robotics in what, a century? Less than a century? Our medical technology, if we go based on the whole organ thing, will definitely be surpassing theirs. That's why, again, I think the whole organ thing is done to frighten people. But I think it's a whole bunch of bunk. Or that, DE just wanted to make the Corpus sound even more frightening than they really are. Because if you know anything about organ transplants, you will know that this makes absolutely no sense at all. And then you look at Star Trek technology, medical technology, compared, and it's supposed to be 400 years in the future? And they don't do that. And you want me to believe that the Corpus, which exists, it's not profitable. It is just not profitable to do organ transplants. It's so much more easier to sell a whole bunch of drugs that can regrow organs and limbs. Again, I pointed out that Kai says that he's had vertebrae crushed, and that means his spine was damaged. And his spine is being repaired because they probably have that ability easily. The ability to to repair a damaged spine, crushed vertebrae, broken ribs. They probably don't even have blood transfusions. Even in Star Trek with Spock, when Sarek needs heart surgery, and they point out that Spock cannot possibly donate enough blood for that surgery, there's a drug for that. And that was an early in development drug, but it's probably advanced. So you want me to believe that the Corpus probably, you lose blood, they'll probably, if you end up in hypovolemic shock, which is due to blood loss, which I suspect they would probably need to provide you with fluids, so they would probably give you an intravenous, which would probably be like it wouldn't even be, they'd probably give you an intravenous and a drug that will, cause blood, to be replicated faster, like, create, than, normal. So the person would end up being very hungry, but, I can see them giving an injection and having their blood, blood cells dividing faster, getting more blood. Anyway, if you know what I mean, they would develop, technology like that. It doesn't fit for me. I can understand if an average Corpus were injured, you would probably want to get him out of that spacesuit because you probably can't provide medical treatment through a spacesuit. But I just, the fact that, I'm basing it all on medical technology simply because, again, I was a pre-med student. Ships and space travel, again, you're telling me that they have existed for millennia and they haven't managed to get beyond the solar system? The Corpus have existed for millennia and they have not managed to leave the origin system. That's why every time I'm like, wait a minute, you're telling me this takes place thousands of years in the future, and yet they are still caught in an ongoing battle with the Grineer for thousands of years. It doesn't make any sense at all. For one thing, they would have, at the very least, they would have had colony ships where they would have, generational ships. They would have come up with ways to get beyond the solar system simply because finding new planets would definitely be more profitable. Or, at the very least, send out probes, scans, to see what other resources are out there. Just at a pure profitable level, at a purely greed-based level, you want me to believe that the Corpus are so technologically stagnant that they have not left the Corpus, who are supposedly the brains of the solar system, have not left the origin system in thousands of years. That they have organ transplants after thousands of years. Again, let me emphasize this. I originally thought, the idea that it's been thousands of years since the collapse of the orchid, okay? Even if they had lost all technological capability with the collapse of the orchid, which they probably did not. But even if they had, which would make sense because it was the orchid that collapsed, the corpus existed. There was Corpus at the time when the orchid were in power because they didn't like them. So, even if let's say they were the Corpus ended up wiped out, or like they would have lost all the fact that they have been finding orchid technology thousands of years, and they have advanced to the level that they have. Yes, their ships, we won't have them for a while. Their ships are definitely more advanced than ours. Their robotics, I see us having the same level of robotics within a century. Their medical technology, I don't believe for a moment that they are doing organ transplants. Next you'll tell me they have blood transfusions. No. Do I see them able to heal broken bones pretty quickly? Yes, I do. The only, it doesn't make sense. So I don't know. It's like, why are they so, especially for this like supposed intelligent society that has existed for millennia, and yet you look at Star Trek and you're like, and don't tell me that the whole, because they're profit based and they focus on profit and gains, that's why their technology is not advanced as the United Federation of Planets, who do for noble goals to advance. Nah. In fact, honestly, I would see, given the profit-based drive of the Corpus, that they would be more advanced than the Federation. Maybe it's because the Federation is different alien groups working together, so each one brings unique ideas and, different perspectives. But again, the Corpus do recruit from colonies. The Corpus, Anyway, I have rambled far too long on this. This video is going to take forever to upload. It's just, like I said, it occurred to me just how lousy Corpus technology is when I was thinking about comparing it to Star Trek and our own technology. The fact that our medical technology, as I said, it doesn't make any sense at all. And I feel like maybe it's because nobody at DE really looked into medical technology and realized that makes no sense. I genuinely think the whole organ thing is to frighten people. And anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. And I do want to see comments. I like comments. And I hope to see you in the tower.